We are live.
All right. Welcome back to Jewcast once again. Alongside my co-host, Alan Roberts, I am Andrew Meyer. We are here with Dominic Michael Tripi, massive news provider on Twitter. Dominic, welcome to Jewcast.
What a pleasure to be on Jewcast. What an interesting name, but I'll tell you what, it kind of flows, man. It hits. It's funny because some of my friends, they're like, Dom, you should stay away. Because I live in St. Louis. It's not the biggest news town. So if you ever do anything viral, like friends and family, they all hear about it. And so a lot of them are like, oh, stay away from controversy. They were like, we don't want you near the word Jew. And I was like, no, it's not like a podcast. It's like what they were thinking that it was something bad. But anyways.
As an honest question, why would they think the word Jew would mean something bad? No. And by the way, just for the reference, I am the token Gentile of Jewcast. I'm an atheist.
But I was going to be on Jewcast. I think they took it as like a slang or like an episode of something. They didn't realize that it was like the actual name of the show. And so I was like, So then I sent them the link, and no, it was a joke, man. It was a joke.
I got to ask you, it looks like you got a replica Stanley Cup over there. What's going on? Are you celebrating my Panthers going back to back? What's with the Stanley Cup, bro?
So I can tell you, man, the Panthers, so didn't they win 2 in a row, but then they went to a third one before that, right?
Yep.
Okay. So like I said, I'm from St. Louis. In 2019, we had an epic cup run. And so the deal with the St. Louis Blues, we set the record for any North American team sport, making the postseason 25 times in a row.
Wow.
But we actually won the big dance. So in 2019, I know people in the political sphere like to make fun of like, oh, sport ball and this and that. But you know what? You got to have a friggin' life. So yeah, I'm a big Blues fan. 2019 Cup run. Went to almost every game. Had like the second row in the double overtime game in the conference final. Man, it brings back good memories. So yeah, we got a little miniature cup.
Nice.
I like though for a little set, right?
I like the American cowboy hat too. That's fire. I like that.
It's like people love to complain, but I think a lot of people forget what we're complaining about, which is, we're trying to work towards having a better America, man. People lose sight and they just want the drama and they just want clicks and they want to make some kind of noise. And it's like, look, unless you're actually coming from a good place, I think eventually people are just going to burn out, truthfully.
So speaking of which, making a better America, that's a good segue, something that everybody's talking about. We finally got the big, beautiful bill passed. Trump is going to sign it tomorrow on the 4th of July. Are you on the side of we had to have this because we need $45 billion a year for ICE to get rid of all the illegals, or you on the side of no, we can't spend the money. That's too much money to spend to deport all the illegals. Where do you fall on that?
All right, so my whole thing is, and this is kind of where I've been going recently, because I wanna remind you, like I've only had X, even though I did. We can get into my story earlier if you want. I did run Owen's X page when he was in prison. However, I didn't have my own X page until February of 2024. And through that course of time, I started to realize like just how unbelievably, I think the word extreme is stupid, but like people just are trying to force you into one camp or another camp. There is no room for, any sort of freedom of thought. It's either totally black or white. And so for me, look, this is going to add $2.4 trillion to the deficit by 2034. It obviously raises the debt ceiling by like $5 trillion. There's a lot of things in it that I really don't like. I was very glad to see that they did axe the AI regulation from it. And I believe that they did take away the portion where Medicaid was still going to be provided for illegal aliens. I'm pretty sure both those things are gone. And with that considered, and considering that most other large bills are always going to have a ton of pork and a ton of bullshit in them, and also that we really can't pass any important or critical legislation given that we only have slim margins. Look, man, when you show me $175 billion for immigration enforcement, I'm going to take it, because now ICE is getting funding that is larger than every single military in the entire world except for 2. I think it's us, China, and then we're number 3 for ICE. So like the type of thing that we're talking about and the sort of pivotal, game-changing, just landscape, we're truly talking about something monumental for immigration. And for me, that's the biggest problem that we're facing. Like, I want to grow up in a culture, in a community, in some sort of semblance of what I'm used to. I don't want to grow up around a ton of Indians or whatever the hell's going on. And even in a small community, like, or I'm not, I don't live in truly a small community, but where I'm from is much smaller than this in the suburbs. And dude, you go down the street and it's like you're in a foreign place. So I think this is great as far as that's concerned. And we'll have to see about the rest. I'm looking forward to reading more about the bill. I want to hear people like Massey and all that. So what's your take on it?
Bro, the benefits of deporting the illegals cannot be overstated. And it's so funny. Like, the number 11 million was used back in Reagan's days. Like that's how many illegals there are. We just saw under Biden how many illegals came through under Biden. He was paying for flights for these people to go anywhere they wanted. And
nobody's going to jail for that, which is
right. Caravan after caravan of these people getting pushed through the border, like Border Patrol helping them through the border, and then they're getting flights, they're getting hotels paid for in New York City, but the number's still 11 million. I'm with Laura Loomer. I think the real number is more like 65 million people. And when you deport all of these people, first of all, the congestion in traffic in major cities, gone. The lack of jobs for young Americans that can't break into any type of industry, not even mowing lawns, gone. Now people can get jobs. The housing crisis where a house costs double what it should, over, because these people are gone and now somebody needs to get in those houses since the illegals aren't there. Like, the lack of social cohesion. I went down to the local mall here. You walk around, people don't speak English. I kid you not. It's like being in a third world airport. This is in Broward County, Florida. Like, that's gone. Like, the 90s America that everybody wants returned, we will get that back through mass deportations. And thank God. Because
you're 100% right. Now it's just a matter of, we know the government's great at spending money. Now, actually putting the pen to paper and really executing the play, like, we see the play they're calling, but like, when it comes to the 10,000 additional ICE agents they're hiring, when it comes to just when you actually look at the breakdown of what they're planning on doing, I don't see how we don't have some sort of significant change. And I do realize that, look, if the numbers are 50 or 60 million, then, 1 million a year or whatever, that's not going to have truly a tangible effect, especially when you factor in like birth rates and things of that nature from people that move here. They reproduce significantly faster than us. It's just the truth. So, but if they do what I think they're capable of doing, and if Trump fulfills even, let's just say he does like 50% of what his campaign promise was, then we will see a noticeable shift. And yes, it's positive for every single native born person. And like, people don't realize sort of the ancillary effects that this causes. Like, people talk about generational issues, like young people being addicted to the screen, not having stuff to do, not having work ethic, things of that nature. Well, it is true that a lot of these companies, especially the larger corporations, they absolutely do have an incentive to try to get illegal aliens to work for them because they don't have to give them any benefits. They can pay them like half the amount. And you can even see that like in local businesses. You see TikToks of people that own construction companies, like small to mid-sized businesses. And they're even talking about, hell, I only want, illegals to roof my, be my roofers. And I just think that this could, if these changes stick, then I think down the line, this could just help in so many ways that people aren't even factoring in. Like the mass deportations, I can understand why people were upset with Trump to this point, because like for me, as a 3-time Trump voter, like I wanted to see mass deportations more than anything else. And the numbers just simply weren't there. But this legislation starts to make it possible. And I do think that it brings, I think a lot of people that were disappointed, I think they're going to, not be as disappointed, honestly.
The people that were talking trash on Trump, where are the mass deportations? First of all, he was hamstrung by the Supreme Court at every turn. And then we finally got the ruling last week. Hey, these lower court judges, They can't make these injunctions about a specific case and then say it applies to the entire federal government, that they can't do things anymore. Like, by the way, the guy quarterbacking the legal on this, the guy quarterbacking DHS that's been getting the numbers up in both cases, it's the special advisor to the DOJ and DHS, Stephen Miller. So you were talking about, hey, are they going to actually execute on this now that they get the money? The most effective person in the entire federal government, besides Trump himself, is Stephen Miller. And since we're on the Jewcast, and I got to hear from all the dissidents, all the noticers all the time, talking about Jews do this, Jews do that, when do we get credit for Stephen Miller being the most effective man in the federal government under Trump affecting these deportations?
So do you know, the last that I read, this bill goes active on October 1st. I believe that's when these funds are able to be used and these processes will begin. So I think if you see from October to springtime a major uptick in deportations, if you see, there's video and the whole 9 yards, and you know how they're going to do it. There's probably going to be helicopter videos, them building the wall, all kinds of crazy stuff. And like, if you see, like, if they give it the Kristi Noem treatment, like if they try to jazz this up and put it in front of the camera and they really do it the way that they're capable of, then I think people will be excited. I just think, when they talk about, if you're talking about like some boomer stuff, just like some Fox News, neocon, there's like red meat that they want to give to that base. Well, there's red meat that they can give to the dissident base too. And that's kicking a bunch of illegal immigrants out of the country. Like, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, like, whether I have certain opinions or whether I have certain prognostications that end up being incorrect, again, man, like, we're about this. Like, I want the results. So like, if I say, oh, they're not going to deport people or whatever it might be, and then they end up deporting a bunch of people, I'm happy to wear like a stupid dunce cap and like, we can like celebrate the deportations or whatever together. So that's what I mean. And that's kind of some of the stuff that I don't necessarily like with some of the online discourse, is because, look, like, if it's so just either offensive or problematic to where there's not a point behind it, like, then I don't think it becomes effective. I actually think it becomes like hurtful to causes that I care about. And so, like, if people want to give me shit for being a nationalist or being an immigration restrictionist or whatever other things that people sometimes like to call me, like, the reality of it is that I actually just care about the future of the country. And I do think that certain activities are just being distasteful or not being willing to speak with people or whatever it might be. Like, that just hurts, man. So for me, it's like, I rather talk to everybody, give them sort of like we'll call it like an academic sort of lens of my views, not be offensive about it. And if we disagree about things, then we disagree. But most of the times people have a lot of things in common. And I have found that, like, you catch way more flies with honey than vinegar. And I don't think that people realize that, like, the same principles that apply in real life of just being a nice person and just being an overall amicable guy, that's going to help your political views, truthfully.
I've never had a problem with people criticizing President Trump, demanding mass deportations. Where are they? We want them faster, because I think all of that noise helped get us there quicker, made the Trump administration doubly aware, hey, this is the base's number one priority. I thought all that was very well and good. Even if people were wrong predicting that it's not going to happen, I don't have a problem with that. You're pushing things in the right direction. The one thing I had a problem with was our good friend Nicholas J. Fuentes telling people not to vote for Trump ahead of the election, only a couple of months before the election, saying there would be no mass deportations and that Trump was going to drag us into World War III. Not only is he dead wrong, no World War III, no 20-year war with Iran, but we are getting mass deportations. And the fact that he told people not to vote for, I'm going to go campaign for Kamala in Michigan. I think that I'm not going to vote because I don't like what's happening. That to me, when you're a right winger, ostensibly with a right wing audience, and you tell people not to vote, that's the same subversive thing that Ben Shapiro did in 2016 to try and cut Trump at the knees. And that I find treasonous.
Well, I mean, I know you're not a big fan of him. I think he's a talented, political analyst. I think that a lot of the stuff he says is true, and a lot of people just won't say it. As far as what he did with the Trump stuff before, I know that was not popular with a lot of people. I don't think he expressly told people not to vote for Trump, but I know
he actually said it
with that. I also know that, he's got issues with other people and things, but I like his stances, man. Like, I'm not in the position to want to go against him. It's just the truth. I thought his debate with Dinesh D'Souza was, I like his politics. I really do. And, I don't know a lot about like the lore and some things that people say in the past. I just know that like, I don't have any direct dealings with them, but honestly, and I really do mean this sincerely, like as far as his political prognostications, I do like his analysis. And like, even though, I know that people refer to it as war with Iran and like what the scale of it was, but I mean, he did accurately predict that there would be a conflict or there would be an escalation with Iran. And like what happened, in Israel, they've never seen destruction like that. And the scale of the operation, and this is more of Israel versus Iran, though, really like specifically. Yep. Either way, though, again, man, like what I'll say is, he's 26 and he does have a lot of talent. And I think that if channeled correctly, like I know that you don't like him, but I do think that, he could be of great use to really move the country in a good, and I genuinely believe that. So if I ever had the opportunity, if I was talking to him, and I think he knows that too, I think that now he's probably more focused on being more amicable with people that maybe he wasn't friendly with, just because if you want to push, certain ideologies and things, you have to be. So I don't know.
Here's my thing about him. He's an actor. He's completely disingenuous. He changes his stances rather often. Like, I mean, and to me, like I haven't changed a stance of mine in fucking years because that's who I am. But he sees the writing on the wall, I think, and changes his where he's going most of the time to try to be controversial. Like there's an attempt to be controversial. Like he is way more of a content creator than a political pundit in my mind. Just that's my take on him. And I mean, everybody should be allowed to speak because I'm like what I call America only. I'm a absolutist about free speech and stuff like that, right? But I did want to backtrack a little bit instead of spending all sorts of times talking about a little fucking gay dude. I did want to backtrack a little bit. Why don't we enforce the immigration laws on the books right now where it's illegal to employ migrants? Because here's my thing. Instead of us spending a bunch of money to move people out that we already borrowed money basically into our debt to fly people in, because for some reason we were actually flying these motherfuckers in. Why don't we, and I think we should spend every fucking dollar we need to get every single illegal alien out of the fucking country, by the way. I am for 100% deportation and 0% illegal immigration. That's where we should be as a country. And that's just how I feel about it. But why don't we like incentivize self-deportation? If we make it impossible to work or have a living establishment, most of these people would fucking leave. So why has not the Trump administration gone that route? I mean, we have people openly talking about like, I only hire illegal immigrants. You should be paid a visit the next day because you're breaking the fucking law and admitting it. Yeah,
I mean, I 100% agree with that. I think the only answer to that question is just the ineptitude or the purposeful deception and inefficiencies of the government. I mean, I think that's the definition of government corruption. I also think that's a symptom of the corporate capture of the government, because make no mistakes, these large companies, they like illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants raise the GDP. Again, you have to pay them much less. There's no benefits. If something happens, you just ship them off. Like, they're incentivized in tons of ways, especially because of little to no enforcement in the U.S. So, in the U.S. thinks of it in ways of, well, this actually keeps the business in the United States. So if it means that we have to have them use some illegal workers instead of them actually offshoring their business or, moving shop altogether, I think it was kind of a backhand deal. But that's why I do think that for as much criticism as Trump has taken, even with like InfoWars and such, kind of, with the new he's George Bush, and I've said that privately plenty of times, like, oh, he's more establishment now, and I don't like it. However, this whole money towards deportations and the way that it actually plays out, if it plays out the way that we suspect that it will, that is very much against the corporate interests of the country and or of the corporations. And that does show that he's not just owned by all lobbies, and he is trying to, I mean, this is one of the most significant pieces of legislation, probably the most he's ever passed. And considering it's got this much for immigration enforcement, I mean, that is what, people say, I voted for this. Well, this really is what you voted for. And we didn't really get into the specifics of how the deportations or where the funding would come from. He just said that he was going to go for it. So, I mean, I even though I think a lot of the things about the bill are irresponsible, and even though I think the government is completely corrupt and it's inexcusable they didn't enforce it before, we can only hope, like we don't have control. We're in the crowds. We're not playing on the field, but it sure looks like we've got, like we're poised to do this.
I agree. Real quick, I agree. But as for the corporations moving their, like, this is what I don't understand, right? Trump was hot and heavy on tariffs for a while, and they were doing what they're supposed to do. And anybody that's against tariffs, you're not paying attention. Let me explain something to you. And this is a part of what my America only thoughts are, right? We are the largest economy in the world. We consume 70% of all the shit. Like literally, we're 4% of the population. We consume 70% of all the shit, right? We shouldn't pay taxes. We should be completely funded by tariffs and fees. There's absolutely no reason why we pay taxes, except that they're trying to burden us, if you ask me. Because to play ball, like, do you know how many countries would not be able to function without our economy, without access to our economy? They would not. They would, like, a huge portion of the world would falter because we are their number one source. Shit, if we threw a tariff on Wegovy or on Ozempic and Wegovy, we could fucking tackle the entire country of Denmark, because they're like the largest corporation in Denmark. They're a huge portion. They're like 4% of their GDP. Like, it's like wild, right? We control, like, we don't control the world like we should, because we allow people to just walk through us. To have access to the largest and most flourishing economy in the world, we should absolutely make these people pay. And if it's not made here, if you want to avoid huge tariffs, make it here. If not, huge tariffs. And very frankly, that's what we used to do. They just wanted to keep taking our money because the government is wholly corrupt. But why do you think Trump backed off on the tariffs when they would actually mean the most, right? Because a lot of these corporations, you are 100% right. These corporations depend on being able to break our laws in our country. Like, very frankly, a lot of these corporations, like a lot of the farm corporations, we should just seize their assets and have them be for the people, because they've built their companies based off of breaking our laws. And to me, America needs to start taking its place in the world. We're the big ass fucking dog. We've got the big ass fucking nuts, and we are literally the biggest economy with the largest, most powerful goddamn military. And we should start fucking acting like it. Like,
I like your style. Like, I was talking to Owen Schroyer the other day, and I was saying, like, I was talking about doing more podcasts and things of that nature, and I was like, the reality of it is like what my real true beliefs are and what I think is realistically possible are sort of two different things. But yeah, for me, it's like, hey, if you're a company that's just like totally completely abusing the immigration policies, or if you're people that are abusing these policies, like, for me, it's just like, yo, bro, we'll give you an air conditioned box, some rations, and like a couple cases of bottled water, but like, forget a flight. We're going to ship your ass back wherever you're from. Like, I'm tired of this total pussy attitude that we've had forever. Yes. That's why our lands have been totally pillaged by foreigners. That's why people are afraid to be like, hey, I don't like this gay stuff, or hey, I don't like my neighborhood being taken over by freaking, all Indian people or whatever it might be. It's like, no, us being soft and us not actually enforcing laws and us not caring to, like, maintain our culture and have respect in what it is. That's why we are where we are. Like, there's more weird people and a bunch of weird bullshit going on in this world than there's ever been. And that's because normal red-blooded men were so heavily societally discouraged from ever just putting their foot down and say, hey, stop this bullshit, or, taken other measures just to make sure that this shit doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think to answer Alan's question, I think Trump did a measured move there with the tariffs where he said, okay, the stock market, Wall Street, they're threatening to crash that whole market if I don't do some sort of half measure with the tariffs.
Fucking what?
Listen, I'm with you.
So what?
I'm with you. I said let Wall Street have the pain. I don't care. But Trump is all about stability. He doesn't want that on his watch. So he did a half measure. Okay, tariffs are going up.
That's the problem. What you just said. That's the problem. He doesn't want that on his legacy. That's why he was able to be pussified into fucking shutting the cut. That's why during Donald Trump's first administration, that's why people were labeled as unessential, which is a fucking disgusting mar on our goddamn history. It's because he cares too much about his legacy and how he's perceived. He should have told everybody, "Fuck you! You can't lock down the American people," but he didn't. Right? And I hope he learned his lesson. But let's be real. And I'm not trying to argue with you, Andrew. But
no, that's good.
That's the problem, right? Like he worries too much about how this will affect Trump. I couldn't give a fuck less. Trump is a tool we should be using to get our fucking country back. He's not
hours during his first administration talking to Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, and it's like, why are you even talking to her? Like,
why do you even give a fuck about this woman?
Story out of Maggie Haberman at the New York Times, never going to happen. But as much as there is to criticize about Trump, you and I would go 0 to 100, Alan. But at least we're getting things like tariffs going up. This was not happening with anybody else, and even the states are starting to act like boldly. I don't know if you saw, but like Missouri seized all of this farmland from China.
Good.
Missouri brought a lawsuit against China. They said, "You gave us COVID.
Missouri goes hard.
And we're seizing your farmland." So
we should do that. We should do that on a national basis. And because you guys did this to us, we're wiping out our debt from you. So we're suing you. We're suing you for the amount of our fucking debt we have.
So Alan, like the thing that happened with the tariffs, that's kind of a microcosm for the main issues that's wrong with the government in general. So the reason why that he had to back off the tariffs, I understand why I did it, because the instability in the stock markets and the true uncertainty it was causing, extreme instability and making stocks, plummet. So I think Howard Lutnick and Besant went to him like 2 days into it and said, hey, this whole, the 90 days or whatever, you need to like nix it now. But that's actually just the sign of a bigger issue. And we all talk about it all the time, but it's just corporate interests and foreign interests. And that's like when people like to complain about Israel or whatever, like the one true, well, there's a few, but the main issue is just the fact that, the weapons and the meaningless or not meaningless, but the endless security guarantees and essentially like, just being tied at the hip and it costing a ton of money and resources and not really having much of a say about it, that bothers people. But the corporations, it's the same thing. I mean, they ultimately, truthfully, corporate interests, special interests, foreign interests, those are kind of the main sort of motivators of where the government really goes. And so I think that's kind of the main problem. Like until we're able to make lobbying at least have extreme regulations on it to where not one particular company or corporation or industry or country can influence us to such a substantial degree that we might actually make policy just because of them. I mean, we have to eliminate those things so the actual will of the people is spoken. And the reality of it is if we're really going to be honest, like, look, when you go down the street and you witness everybody, like there's plenty of people that are either too stupid, disinterested, don't know anything about politics. Like everyone simply should not be voting. And that's not how this system was ever originally intended. So I think that when we're being realistic, and again, this is just my personal view, I don't think this is realistically ever going to happen, but I don't think it's really even an argumentative point. It's just the truth. Way less people should be voting. And although we may all be equal under God, we are certainly not all equal as far as our knowledge or our contributions to the country. And I'm not saying that if you're like a handicapped person or something, you have no say. But if you're just some deadbeat asshole that doesn't know anything, you can't even name 5 presidents, you can't name anything about any political policy or legislation that's passed in the last few years, it's like, who says that you have a right to even to have a say? I
The,
don't really
the only problem with that is who determines who has a right to say, right?
exactly.
Because if we leave it up to the government, I can guarantee you this: last year, conservatives wouldn't have had the right to say. Like at some point in time, like I'd rather again, America only. The federal government, like the way to fix what we need to do is not feasible within the time frame before we reach the tipping point. If we actually ever want to worry about the debt and start paying it down, we have to reboot the federal government back to its three core concepts. It's got to look out for the border, common defense, and protecting our rights from the states. Everything else is just layer upon layer upon layer of shit that the states already have. Every state has its own little CDC. Every state has its own police force. Every state has its own other agencies. Every state has that. We don't need the FBI, the CDC, the NIH, the USDA. We don't need the government was never intended to be this involved in our lives. We shouldn't even be involved in other people's lives. We should close all of our military bases, and then, oh, hey, we've got the troops from 800 foreign military bases that cost us fucking billions of dollars a year that we can line up on our southern and northern border, and we're done. Like, I know it sounds isolationist, but one more time, just so everybody understands, it's not isolationist. We're the largest military and largest fucking economy in the world. People should be kissing our motherfucking ass, and we should just worry about us. If somebody needs our aid, our military aid, they should fucking pay us for it. It should be beneficial to us. We should be the thug if necessary, but we shouldn't just give them shit. Like, we're not going to get back to doing that with the politics we have going on with the people we have. We need like a complete reboot. We need something new. And unfortunately, Trump is the lead and he's not running again. And the next person, all they got to do is convince the people of America that it can be close enough that they can cheat. And that's all they're going to do again.
One thing that Dominic said is we need to get to the will of the people. And unfortunately, every single thing that we've seen in America has been the will of the people. It hasn't been people being tricked, people being subverted, the boomers, for example, the reason that we didn't get these tariffs, they're the ones panicking about the stock market. They don't give a shit about the boomers as a generation. You can find story after story. They don't visit their own grandchildren. They're not interested in the lives of their children or their grandchildren. The most self-absorbed, narcissistic generation in history. So they don't care about tariffs that would improve the American economy. They don't care about jobs.
My parents are boomers. We used to have a commercial. We used to have a commercial that come on at 10 o'clock at night for my parents. Do you know where your kids are at? Like, they're the most fucking horrible, like abusive, like neglectful fucking generation ever raising kids.
And the thing that you said about the thing that you said about well, hey, what's the left going to do to us if we restrict, voting? The thing is like, you're right. You have to, and this is kind of the problem. You have to make things so watered down, like the type of measures that's like, let's say that we were going to create some sort of qualifications to vote. We'd have to make them so simple that they would barely, like, the left to even argue against it is like anti-American. So we would say that, you have to name like just some simple stuff that you would give to like a fifth grader if they were immigrating into the country or something. Name 3 presidents, name the capital, 3 states, just some stuff like that. And then also for sure your ID. But even just those 2 things, you'd be surprised how many people either wouldn't be able to vote or just wouldn't even try.
If we have the political capital that we're able to put in such a change as that, then at the same time, we'd be able to put people in office that would not be taking pork, that would not be trying to do things for the benefit of special interests. So the real problem, the fundamental problem, has been that for generations, Americans have been disinterested, believing everything that's on television. They have no fucking idea what's really going on. But we have a generational shift coming up. And because of Trump and because of the pain of not being able to buy houses, not having jobs, people are more interested in politics than ever before. Because they're more interested, because they're more tuned in, and because of the internet, Alex Jones and everybody else, they're getting the real information. Because of this, with the rising consciousness, if people actually care, we will fix the system. And I think that is going to happen. The problem has been people not caring and people being absolutely selfish, greedy, retarded. But I think we're having a different generation taking the reins pretty soon.
Here's another, this is kind of a black pill, but here's another reality, because earlier I think that he mentioned how Trump was placating to, certain corporations because of the tariffs. And like, here's the truth. Our elected officials, they ultimately want to remain in office. So oftentimes their primary motive is just to make sure they get elected again. And if your job is to get elected again, which it is in every democracy, or even just to win an election to begin with, then you have to do things that are good for the short term. No one ever wants to do anything that's great for the country 5, 10, 20 years down the road. Maybe things that even are so necessary that they will make you avoid total catastrophe. But no one ever wants to do anything and put the future first and do safer moves, because if that requires any sort of short-term sacrifice, which almost anything does. If you want to be jacked, you got to go on a diet for a while. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I just think that that's kind of problematic with, again, the corporate capture of the government to begin with, because so many times these people won't make decisions that are truly best for the future of America, but they'll either make them for a self-serving purpose, to get reelected again, or they'll do them because they have some sort of financial benefit from some sort of special interest. So like, that's why you had mentioned earlier a total, kind of like I don't like the word total reset, but some sort of re-envisionment of what we've got now. And what I think that involves is banning lobbying, or at least really regulating it to where it's, minuscule of what it is now, and then getting a new crop of people in there that are not totally already affiliated with these nefarious different relationships.
Absolutely. 100%.
So Dominic, last week was I think a high watermark for fake news on Twitter. There was one story, especially concerning, this is the Jewcast, especially regarding Jews. There was some psycho in an airport that grabbed a toddler and just picked him up and body slammed him, smashed him. And there was a coordinated campaign all at the same time. Adam E. Media, Syrian Girl, Suleiman Ahmed. They all just started saying out of the clear blue sky that because the child is an Iranian and the guy that did that to him, it's a Jew. No evidence the guy was a Jew. Turns out, there's a picture of him wearing his cross. Not a Jew, just a psycho druggy guy from Eastern Europe. They all claimed he was a Jew. Fake news. Another one, this guy with a...
Where did that happen, by the way?
Huh?
Where did that happen, the kid thing?
Or something.
Yeah, like Eastern Europe.
Or obscure, but yeah.
Something.
Because I don't understand how that dude wasn't dead.
It was terrible. Yeah, that was horrific. Truthfully.
Yeah, the people that just watched that happen, that's crazy to me too. But another story.
You guys would be creating new words for violence for the shit I would fucking do to a motherfucker.
Yeah,
I believe it. There was another guy with Hebrew letters tattooed across his neck, and he went and crucified.
That was horrific.
In Arizona, and Dave Riley, who I like, he's been on the show, friend of the show. He was saying that this guy is Jewish, and turns out also not a Jew. So I'm just curious, for you, Dominic, do you see any specific account or any specific person on Twitter that you think that guy really, he of all the people that should be community noted or taken notice of for pushing fake news, are there any accounts that you're you know what, these guys, they don't really have it right? Dude,
I'll tell you this. I mean, as someone that does a lot of news on Twitter, I mean, when it comes to, especially when there's any sort of legitimate war operation, especially even though, we'll argue if it was a war or not, but there was definitely the missiles going between Iran and Israel. And when there is armed conflict and it's fast paced and it's alerts here and there and it's foreign media sources, stuff goes around that's just simply either not true or it's mistranslated or it's sensationalized to the degree where it's just rampant. And the only way to avoid it is to simply, there's a few different things. You can wait until someone that very rarely gets it wrong, or to have at least some degree of certainty. So, people always want to be first instead of being accurate. And then as far as the thing with that baby story, someone probably just wrote that. And again, man, people are just so into clicks, and no matter what it is, a lot of times they know Jewish or Israel stuff is hot for clicks. If they see it, they'll just copy paste it and do it. I mean,
So
you
true.
even saw like I had a post that ended up getting like 60,000 likes. And I wrote talking points went out, and it just showed like a bunch of people saying the same stuff. I don't know. It's to the point where it's gotten bad on X, dude. I'll be honest with you. Just overall, I had a conversation with Schroyer how we were talking about it's sad, but oftentimes even just like mainstream media is going to give you just as accurate of a point of view because there's just too many people that are going for clicks, and which is like one reason why I actually stopped doing quite as many posts, because the more followers you get, the more you realize if you do something wrong, not only does it make you look bad, but there could actually be some sort of consequence, especially if it's about war or whatever else. So I don't know. I just think that people in general need to use more discernment on X. I think that, free speech and stuff needs to be allowed. But as far as specifically news, I do think that there probably should be some better community notes, even to my account too, just anyone. Just because, dude, there's a lot of stupid shit out there.
So, gentlemen, real quick, I do need to run for a little bit. So, if you guys are going to be here, I have a consultation with a client that happened in the last minute. So, if you guys are still here 15 minutes from now, I'll see you. If not, pleasure meeting you, sir. Okay, I'll see you in 15.
Sounds good.
We'll get to enjoy his thumbnail. Oh, not even the thumbnail.
It has gotten bad on
me, Dominic. Mano y mano. No.
Don't you think though? Seriously, like I mean the quality of it, and then the shilling too. It's like, look, I understand having a point of view, but like just some of the main guys, like I don't want to name them because I'm cool with them, but some of the main Trump news accounts that you know of that are the biggest ones, like when they put in like their exclamation points or like, yeah, let's deport too with the news. It's like, I just put a headline out there and then I wait for someone to maybe tune in if I happen to do something like this, then they can get my opinion, but I feel like it's just too biased. So
I put out a curated news list. Like if you go to my Twitter at the Andrew Meyer and you find my list, I have had a news list for years and years and years, just called Real News. I only ever have 72 accounts on there. So if I notice accounts are like going off the path of like telling straight news to like doing something else, I'll clip them and find somebody better. Like I curate that thing always because it's a very important to me that people are getting the real stuff all the time. And, I find that level of rigor, the new media, a lot of these guys, people that were getting the Epstein binders, for example, at Mar-a-Lago, those people are not always so rigorous. They take money sometimes. That soda campaign, that thing that came out. So not all those guys are like 100% with like the stuff that they put out. But it's also, where do you see the noticers as far as discernment and trustworthiness? Do you see the noticers at this point as being like high discernment, very trustworthy, maybe middle of the pack, or maybe a little low discernment from the noticers? Where do you see that these days?
Well, I mean, it's kind of a broad term. I don't know. A lot of those people are boys, man. And like, so, I don't go out of my way to alienate them. At the same time, this is the real truth. Like, I think, and I agree with tons of stuff those guys say because it just so happens that they align with nationalistic pro-American principles. However, there's a line to certain things where I think it becomes, we'll call it not helpful. Another way to put it is problematic, and it makes it to where it alienates people that have any of those views. You don't understand that, like, even if there's a very slim chance of any of the things that like you might agree with them on of ever happening, it's not ever going to happen if it's always associated with just only anons and only people that are in the comments of people just talking bad shit all the time. Like I'm not a young dude. Like I'm an adult, you know what I'm saying? And I'm realizing that like, yes, although sometimes I'm not going to agree with people, I'm also not like a dumbass that thinks ever there's going to be a time where it's like, yep, no Jews in America anymore. Yep, zero foreigners at all. Like that, it's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream. So like, I want to make the very best America that we can make today that can realistically actually happen. And sure, dude, like, Andrew, do I think that there is like a disproportionate amount of influence and stuff from the Jewish lobby or from, you know, heads of major companies that happen to be Jewish and things of that nature? Sure. But do I think that that means that like every Jewish person on the 9 to 5 person that just is in the community is the same shit? No, that's just dumb. So like, I'm willing to like make some observations, be honest, give my opinion, but I also draw the line when it's like, no, can't talk to Jews ever, can't do anything with Jews ever. We're never going to get anything done, literally fucking ever. So, I mean, if you can't even have a conversation, then it gets to the point where it's like, yo, dude, this isn't realistic. This isn't a movement. We got to work together to be reasonable, to actually make some of these changes appear normal and, you know, willing to give a listen to. So, you know what I'm saying, man?
There's a guy that's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he just started saying every single Jew is lying. Every single Jew on Twitter is lying. And I'm like, you know, when you say every single Jew, you're talking about me, and he knows that he is. And it's like, when you get to that level where you want to say every single, it's first of all, I don't even think that guy believes it. I don't think he believes it at all. But at the same time, you're doing what the ADL wants you to do, what the globalists want you to do, what even a lot of the Zios, as Suleiman would say, would want you to do. By doing division, divide and conquer, you're trying to take people that otherwise could come together and build America first, and now you're putting them in separate boxes so that they're aimed at each other. It actually doesn't help build America. It actually splits America. The ADL purposefully creates anti-Semitism. If people don't know this, Gavin McInnes talked about this a long time ago, where in his place in Canada, there was no anti-Semites. The ADL showed up, and all of a sudden there were these skinheads that looked like maybe the ADL was supporting them to create anti-Semitism so that the ADL then gets funding. The ADL can push all of their rhetoric, and it creates these divisions between people that they can exploit. So the needless hatred, the baseless hatred, every single one, that type of stuff, it creates this divide that is exploited by the enemies of America. And I think the people that don't realize that, or whatever, they're playing into it for clicks, whatever it is, it's not good for America, not good for anybody.
Well, yeah. I mean, one thing I think is just like people need to focus on things that are actionable. So like if you have, you know, and here's the thing, some people, they're not going to change their personal views, but I can only really implore them, like, look, if you actually, this is going to sound bad, but the reality of it is if you actually think that, you should be cognizant of like who you're saying it to and when, and you should understand that if certain people hear you act like that, then they're going to tune you out. So if like your interests are to actually look legitimate, look professional, and be someone that wants to advance your viewpoints, then you're going to need to learn how to articulate, how to speak with people that don't agree with you, and also like keep your personal disdain, either frame it in a different way or keep it to yourself, because you just make yourself look bad. That's the real truth. That's how I think about it. And the other thing, man, is like, I just think that ultimately you have to just be realistic about stuff. And I think that a lot of people like to get into a fantasy world that's just not really going to happen. So, you know, as of right now, like something that you could do instead of being like, you know, if you're worried about, I hate to say this, I'm like dancing around words, but if people are like, okay, look, I don't want Jews in the government. Well, that's not really a thing that is ever going to be actionable by the US government. You could say, and this is true for everyone, that you don't want dual citizens in the government because you think that's problematic and that other countries don't have it. If you frame it in a different way, even though you might effectively be getting the same result, that's actually a principled stance that makes some sense. And you may actually get some people to listen to you, maybe some people that actually can do something about it. But that's what I'm talking about. Like, it's already out of the bag, bro. Like the stuff on Twitter, that stuff's not edgy. Like even for people that agree with it, do you think that stuff's new anymore? Like, do you think that if I go and read some Talmud shit, like people like, come on, like, do you understand what I mean? So like that's what I'm saying, Andrew. Like, look, there's plenty of stuff that I agree with those guys on. However, not everything. And also there's a way to go about it. And it's not bitching on Twitter. Like, we're beyond that. The country's fucking almost going to be burned to the ground, bro. Like we're really in bad shape. So I'm done living in fantasy world. Like, let's do some actionable steps. And if we ever take some actionable steps and you guys live in some world where, all your memes and shit are like fucking real, well, hell, I guess we can talk about it then. But I don't see that happening. So let's worry about what we can actually do.
That's why my biggest issue, and I hate to come back to this again because we mentioned it, but the point there, when Nick Fuentes told people, I'm going to campaign in Michigan for Kamala, et cetera, that's an actionable step that is drilling the hole in the boat of America. Like, instead of hey, let's get Trump in and then let's move him in the direction we want after he's in office. If you cut Trump out at the knees, you think Kamala would have stopped Netanyahu from doing anything that he wants to do? You think Kamala would have shut the border? This country would have been over and finished. Counter-signaling Trump 2 months before the election, right before the election. We have mutual friends, Nick Fuentes and I, and they told me, Nick's plan is to try and leverage Trump and get promises, and then he's going to pull up before the election and stop pushing this, I'm not going to vote for Trump stuff. He never did.
No,
that.
I get it. I know you don't have a problem with Nick. I like Nick. I've never met Nick. I like his views. I mean, I don't want to.
Do you like the view that people shouldn't have voted for Trump? Do you like that view?
No, I don't like that view. But I also, I know where he's coming from because I think ultimately the corporate capture and a lot of those things are true. So we did get the big, beautiful bill passed. From what I know, he was complimentary of it for the immigration stances. No, man, that's not the way I'd go about it. No, but I do think that I really do. I think that he's a uniquely skilled political commentator. So I don't know any other stuff, but that's just the way I feel about him. I do understand where you're coming from, though, and I'm not discounting you for sure.
He's a talented speaker, sure, although he's afraid to debate me. But he's a talented speaker. But just again, all the talent and all the good positions in the world. If Trump loses that election, this country would have been fucked. So the fact is, what he said to do was suicidal as a nation. That is very, very, very bad. And that has to be accounted for.
I'm of the opinion, man, that like we really, unless this immigration enforcement, what's going on is like miraculously successful, I'm kind of the opinion that we're buying ourselves time, but that inevitably just how can we keep this going unless some really foundational changes are made, like to the immigration system and also just, the money and everything, it's just spinning out of control. It gets to a degree where something is so large, they talk about too big to fail, but what about when the mechanism that could ever even stop it is failing itself? So yeah, I know what you're saying. And I just think that we're in perilous times, and I don't have as much as great as this enforcement thing is with the immigration and with the big, beautiful bill. I'm still just worried because we're not addressing, like the government isn't willing to address in blunt terms that like we need no more third world immigration and that the country, all of the society that our parents have grown up in, that we've grown up in for the beginning half of our lives, like that was, we were an exclusive place to be. And unless we make it exclusive again, I think that, they say import the third world, become a third world. We're seeing it in every major city. And I think that Trump has been like a booster rocket, and he's boosted us up to the point where we need to be. And I'm thankful for him for that. But I do think that like the next wave is going to be politicians that are willing to say those things explicitly. And one of the reasons I think that, Andrew, is because the political opposition is very clearly growing more extreme too. They're growing openly towards socialists. And I don't think that, as the income gap widens and more people feel disenfranchised or unable to get ahead of life, that's why you see people like Zoran becoming popular, which I hate, but I think you're going to see an equal response to that probably from the right wing. Hopefully.
That's the silver lining of Zoran Mamdani, is people recognizing, wait a minute, this exists. This is a thing. How is this possible? And then them digging in and seeing, oh, there's all these third world people that just got off the boat, just got off the plane, the bus, whatever, and they're in New York City. And I think another white pill, there's a book on my shelf right behind me called Generations, and it talks about how there in American history, there's 4 types of generations. 2 of them are the idealists and the civics. The idealists are the boomers. That type of generation has screwed up America several times. And then the idealists, that's me, the millennials. We come in and we fix things. And yeah, not all the millennials are so wonderful, but there's a lot of millennials that have inordinate power compared to what Gen X got. Like J.D. Vance is the vice president. There was no Gen X president, no Gen X vice president. It went straight from boomer to millennial in an executive chair. And that's going to happen in the country too. The based millennials, people, and you can dislike J.D. Vance if you want, but people like him, Jack Posobiec, me, we're on the forefront, the front lines, further than Gen X was at our ages, and we're making real changes. And I'm telling you, our generation has very low tolerance for the Indians, the Afghans, the Syrians, the Central Americans. All these people gotta go. My personal stance: not only do all the illegals have to go, all the H-1Bs have to go, all the green card holders have to go. If you got here in the last 10 years, you should probably be denaturalized and deported, even if you're a citizen. Just like Zoran Mamdani, just like tens of thousands of Somalians up in Minnesota, these people gotta go. And I think that is going to become very mainstream. And when the alternative is these theater kid homosexuals on the left, like Zoran Mamdani, that's not actually popular. Like, real men don't like that shit. The top women don't like that shit. And the coalition of like the top men and women, that's what elected Trump. It's all the betas and losers, people that are broken. That's what falls to the left. So that stuff is not. Another thing, Nick Fuentes is signaling support for Zoran Mamdani. How is that America first?
No, I will. Let me say this. I will say this about how they attack Zoran. Look, I'm not a socialist. I don't agree with the guy's politics, but when they go for the whole, like, they are certainly really pushing this very, like look, dude, I'm not like some fan of Islam. Like, I'm Catholic, but they push this like Islam shit. Like, bro, his wife is more of, she's not in some hijab. He's not like he's just a shit lib. He's not for Sharia law. If anything, he's just some shit lib that's for, gays in the street. So I think when they go after him for that, it's a little disingenuous because he's just super far left. He's definitely not hard Sharia. That's all.
I don't care what his religion is. I don't want someone named Zoran Mamdani being the mayor of New York City. When they were deporting Mahmoud Khalil and they were deporting Rumeysa Ozturk, and the Groypers were crying about it because, oh, this is what the Jews want. Who cares if this is what the Jews want? America first means we don't want people named Rumeysa Ozturk, Mahmoud Khalil, Zoran Mamdani, tens of millions of Central Americans.
I don't know what
however they get out. It's good that they get out.
I don't know what they said about Mahmoud Khalil, but I do know that there's tons of libertarian people and stuff that said that it's not so much they care about. I can't
hear you all of a sudden.
Gone. It's more about the reasons for doing it, unless they actually commit a crime. So, like, look, I'm for deportations. Don't get me wrong, but I think we should be prioritizing people that are like traditional, actual illegal immigrants before we're worried about people that are on student visas that didn't even commit crimes.
The funniest thing to me is forever the dissident right, Nick's crowd, and a lot of them still are. Like Scott Greer still is about this. John Doyle is still about this. They talked about demographics are destiny. Okay, if demographics are destiny, it's good to deport Rumeysa Ozturk. It's good to deport Zoran Mamdani. I don't care the reason. Whatever the reason is, get them out of my country. I don't want third worlders eating rice with their hands. I don't want them here. I don't care what the reason is. Get them out.
if we were doing it in some sort of numbers that were like super major, I mean, look, I don't want to go like, because I have a lot of, here's the truth. I have a lot of leftists that follow me now too. So I don't really want to go full fash mode, but here's the truth. Like, yeah, if you were going to be like, all right, Tripster, we're going to deport like millions like this, where we could really make a big difference, then yeah, you might get my support. But if it's just a handful,
let's do it.
Because I know, like earlier, what we had talked about, if we restrict voting, what the left would try to do. Like, it wasn't that long ago, bro, that we lived in the vaccine world where they were like, you're a criminal because you don't want that. So even though right now I know that like the Israel stuff is like the flavor, and I do know that, like, look, just seriously from like a freedom standpoint, I am uncomfortable with some of these task force that are being made. I am uncomfortable with some of the crackdowns. Now, of course, if someone is actually participating in terroristic activities, then fucking of course, put them in cuffs, get them on a plane, get them the fuck out of here. However, I do think some of that stuff is problematic only because things like the Patriot Act, none of that stuff was supposed to be against us. And I know that it's a slippery slope. So I do think that, and that's what I'm saying, man. This is what I mean about some of the guys, you call them noticers. And a lot of those dudes are good guys that are my homies. And I know that they go too hard. And I know that maybe they disagree online and it's a little distasteful. But at the end of the day, there are some of the things that they're saying that do have legitimacy. And that is why I try to throw caution to the wind to them and say, you guys, there are some things that are actually legitimate that you do happen to speak about. However, unless you put some of the rest of this in a presentable way, in a respectful way, no one's going to ever tune you in. So that's all I meant, man. I want personal liberties. I want freedom.
The noticers need to take a little more notice of Europe. Take a look at the UK. Take a look at Germany. Take a look at Sweden. They let all these Muslims in, and they are raping the women. They are changing the country. It is absolutely awful what's happening. And so not only do the illegals need to go, the legals need to go, including the Muslims. I don't care whether they talk shit about Israel or not. They're not American. They don't belong here. And if the noticers who are all about demographics is destiny want to talk about demographics, then the people named Rumeza Ozturk and Zoran Mamdani must be deported. And the fact that they're but the Jews want them to deport it. That shows these people are not America first. They are Israel last or Jews last. To the detriment of America, they are more interested in opposing Jews than they are helping America, because it does not help America at all to have Zoran Mamdani or Mahmoud Khalil or any of those people in this country.
So can I ask both of you a question? Because you guys are kind of like, you're with the, and by the way, I'd never heard of the word noticer before, Andrew, in the early chat. But just to you guys, I have a question. Do you think that one of the big reasons why people are yelling about Jews and this and Iran, all sorts of shit, is because people are actually dying from the shit we did a couple years ago? Like, people are starting to fucking seriously die off, right? And you brought up, you brought up the pandemic and the shit was done. Here's reality. Like, voting doesn't matter, honestly, until we actually get justice for that shit. Like, that was the most dystopian, fucking crazy ass bullshit. The fact that we aren't stacking bodies like fucking pine right now would upset the founders so fucking much it would be disgusting. But until we get justice for people being labeled as essential and non-essential, fired because they wouldn't be wearing a mask, like literally fired because like somehow or another, not only did informed consent get out of the business, and by the way, Michael, Dominic, just so you know where I'm coming from, I was a healthcare executive for like 12 years. So like, we had no informed consent about any fucking thing. Like, informed consent is the doctor explains to you in terms you understand what's going on. None of that happened. I mean, businesses closed down. They destroyed the economy. They basically tore the fabric of our reality, right? Until that's dealt with, I mean, they're just going to keep tossing shit at us to argue about. Like, don't get me wrong, these are all important issues. Like, Israel's a real place, and they got their shit that where I don't like the Israeli. I have no problem with Jews. The Israeli government's evil as fuck, just like our government's evil as fuck. I love Americans, but most of the governments are truly fucking evil. Like, when you think about it, most of them have probably shagged a kid. Like, it's a serious issue, right?
I-
So how much of this stuff all of you think is a distraction? Because here probably we're gonna be yelling about transgenders here probably next week too. So
I just want to say one thing about what you said about 2020, the vaccine, the lockdowns, all that. I mean, for me personally, like that sort of really struck an anti-establishment nerve in me. And that's why, like most of my stuff, I consider myself, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely right-leaning, but truthfully, I consider myself fully independent because I just have such deep mistrust in the government. I truly do. And so I like Donald Trump. I voted for him 3 times, but I do not get upset with people when they expect the worst, or if they feel deceived, or if they think, hey, this operation isn't what they say it is, or whatever, because I understand just how deceived and let down they were, not from Trump himself even, but just from that moment. And my way of thinking is the bureaucracy, so many unelected officials, plenty of people that are appointed, plenty of people that are, elected officials in the government, the level of corruption and the way that they even would lie to Trump himself. Trump's not a doctor. How's he supposed to know how to deal with COVID? So I just think that a lot of that sort of animosity and that anger that sort of spilled over into January 6th, I think that a lot of people still have that buried and they're upset. And you do see that from a lot of people that originally supported Trump that now are a little more critical. And I do think that I just think that anger has spilled over. I think October 7th really, it turned people on to Israel for the first time. X got monetized. That subject became very popular. That spans across, the globe. It's popular in other places besides America, which, you do see a lot of accounts that aren't based in America that do talk about it all the time. So I think it's kind of a perfect storm of things. And it was a subject that people didn't know about. And then, of course, because Israel is the Jewish state, then once people start learning about Israel, they start reading about Jewish stuff. That goes into World War II and all kinds of other things. And then before you know it, it's like Talmud this, Talmud that. And it just totally like, look, I'm not saying that all that stuff sometimes doesn't have a time and place to be discussed. I'm just saying that, again, I'm interested in American politics and pushing the country forward. And I even know that myself. Look, now I'm not someone that's like sitting here with the Talmud out, like super angry. I'm also someone that has been critical of some of that type of shit. But dude, in the overall scheme of things, none of that stuff is going to do anything to ever make this be a reasonable conversation where we could do something as Americans to move this fucking ball down the field.
I so don't give a and I know people, this upsets people, and I'm on a show called Jewcast. I so don't give a fuck what they do in Israel. I honestly don't. I really don't. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't care what they do in Israel if it wasn't for the fact that, like if Israel chose to attack Iran and then, obviously Iran shot all those missiles at them and it required a lot of THAAD missiles, Patriot missiles, David Sling, Arrow 2, Arrow 3, they have tons of defense, but it is true. Like the United States and Israel militarily are extremely close, and they do utilize tons of those resources. I don't know if you guys saw the report a couple days ago, but apparently the United States global supply of THAAD missiles was it had
depleted,
expended. And so if we use 20% of our global supply in only an 11-day conflict, God forbid something like China or any other aggressor that could hit the continental United States. So like, I do get it. And that's why for me, it's like, look, Israel is going to exist. And if people don't think that it's going to exist, well, they're going to blow up a shitload of people and cause complete chaos. So the reality of it is my view is that we should decouple from them as much as possible, have them be their own independent entity. Look, if we're allies or whatever, we're allies. But the situation we have now, it's unhealthy. The 3 trips from Netanyahu already. Like, I understand why even people that are not Israel critical are like, what the fuck's going on here? We have to get rid of that situation militarily. And, people can argue about Iran. People can argue about some of the other things. I just want to be America first, which means I don't want lobbying. I don't want military conquests on behalf of other countries. I think realistically, it's going to be very hard to get people out of our country that are legally here. So I think we focus on who the fuck we can get out of here. And then we really start to worry about ourselves and getting ourselves back to where we need to be. And honestly, truthfully, for people that are like more, if they think that's like, oh, he's like a pussy, that's not, he needs to go harder. Well, if we can fix what we got going on, maybe I'll consider listening to you. But until then, it's a fantasy movie. And I'm sick of people that are stroking their fantasy fucking, stuff online when none of that's going to happen. People aren't even strong enough to help themselves in their own community or have a family. So like the best thing for people that they can do is to be, it sounds corny, but until you're your best yourself, you're not going to be able to affect change. Like you're not even going to fucking do a podcast or anything. So people live in fantasy world and I'm fucking tired of it, bro.
Owen Benjamin we had on the show, and he talks about a lot of times, like the people that are obsessed with the Jews. Hey, if you really want to beat the Jews, why don't you go have a family? Why don't you go homestead and grow your own food? Why don't you, like you're saying, fix your life? A lot of the people that obsess all the time on the internet, they're not taking care of themselves. And as you say, living in a total fantasy. And I think, honestly, that's the reason people are afraid to debate me. I'm one of the realest of the real. And the people at this point that were like scared to debate me, it's Jake Shields, Sam Parker, Nick Fuentes, Myron Gaines. The list is very long of guys that want to talk about Jews all the time, but they won't come on the show called Jewcast and debate the top J. So,
you never know, man.
World, tell them the invitation is extended. Any noticer that wants to come on the show and
it's so wild. It's so wild. Just to point this out, and this is nothing against Jake Shields or any of those people or Myron or anybody like that, because like freedom of speech, blah blah blah. But like, it's wild how the people that got famous for talking shit on Jews, and Myron was famous before that, by the way. But I mean, but he's definitely Myron. Like Myron is like me. We just have different thoughts. Like it just comes out. There's nothing we can do about it. But like they all got famous for the same reason that a lot of people who pushed the COVID shit got famous. Like there's a whole, like every wave of this shit creates new like famous influencers basically. And I just find it kind of funny because it's, again, one more time, it's a way for people, like nobody got famous being an anti-COVID policy person. Nobody really got famous for doing that. Like some people rose up because they were like, oh, we're against this, but like nobody like got famous. Like it's still the industry talking points about what they want us to talk about. Like right now, we're being told to talk about Jews. You know what I mean? Like as if there's, and it's also weird because as if it's not like there's not other conflicts that we're actually involved in around the fucking world right now too. Like we're involved.
I see. Well, I do get it because especially if you're right leaning, I mean, it is something that really, like if you talked about, and if you were critical of Israel, or especially if you were outright critical of Jews, you were going to get canceled or you were going to experience some sort of significant issue or you weren't going to be able to get popular. That kind of changed once the X stuff happened. And like, yeah, there is definitely, and you go back to like Pat Buchanan or you go back, there's things before that. You get into some of the JFK shit and stuff. There definitely is some nefarious shit that went on with Israel for sure. So the fact that people couldn't talk about it and it was considered a forbidden truth, I understand its surge in popularity. And I understand, and I'm someone that agrees with a ton of the quarrels. That being said, because I do care about them and because I do think that it has gone against American sovereignty in several different issues, I think it's important to talk about it in a reasonable way. But I also think that that's where it becomes problematic when people can do whatever they want. I just think that for substantial change to actually occur, you have to meet people where they're at and make things seem digestible, not to be fake. Like I'm also not super hardcore. There's plenty of people that'll be mad that I'm not more hardcore, but I just think unless you are reasonable, unless you're pragmatic, we're never even going to be able to make any positive changes that are even, half of what you wish you were going to get. So,
well, I got to give you props for having the balls to come on the show, especially when people were telling you in your ear, like, hey, that could be dangerous. Don't do that. You know,
No.
you got the balls to come and talk when a lot of people talk on the internet and they have no balls.
Well, no, I appreciate. I mean, look, dude, I think that if you're a good person, if you're not, I think that people are fucking weird that say that I am a good person. But I think if you're a decent, honorable person and you have any respect or knowledge about your own views, you should be able to come on and talk about them. So, like, and that's another thing. It's like, look, if you were sitting here and being like, no, like if you were challenging me on stuff that I thought was 100% correct, I'd be the first person to be like, no, Andrew, like I like you, man, but I totally disagree with this. And, it's all good. Even like the shit with Fuentes. It's like, look, I understand that some people have issues with him. I don't know the guy, but he hasn't ever done anything to me. And I do find his views to be pretty fascinating and unique. So the point is that people, especially people that have any sort of, we'll call them unique or passionate political views. If you have any following whatsoever, I think that you should be able to come on, have a nice, respectful discussion and let your cards out there, man. And it's like, they love to get in this sensationalized internet zone. It's like, dude, I'm just a normal guy. Like, and I will say, you guys mentioned Jake and Myron. I don't know what conversations about debating or whatever, but honestly, I've known those guys to be nothing but nice dudes. And I know.
Oh, they seem like they're. I've communicated with them also. I think they're great guys.
Yeah, I know. Jake had Adam King on recently. Jake had Adam King on recently. I know that look, people might have.
Here's the thing. Jake's also friends with Mark. Like Jake has Jewish friends. Yeah, I mean, like.
Point is, a lot of these guys that are very passionate, dude, they're just normal guys. And that's kind of the main issue. And that's something that I've actually worked on my own Twitter. I don't put as much opinion out there because people just take it and they don't really put any nuance to it. So it's just not worth it, man. So I just kind of, I stick to the news and that's kind of it.
I think one thing that you said, it reveals the reason that some of these characters won't, which is that you said, if these are your views, you should be able to come and discuss them. I think some people just say stuff for clicks. And if they're just saying stuff for clicks, then when they come on this show, they know it's going to get exposed. They know that they can't back up some of the shit that they talk. So if you can't back your shit up, of course you don't want to come face me. I mowed down Candace Owens, Dan Bilzerian, Andrew Tate, Dave Smith, and Tristan Tate 5-on-1, all in one space.
I forgot about that space.
They know that. They don't want to come and face me and get mowed down. All right.
So what is the debate about?
They cannot handle it. They cannot handle it.
What is the debate about though? Like,
well, frankly,
they don't like. I mean, because here's the thing. Like, is there a debate about Jewish people or the Jewish government? Because the Jewish government's evil. Jewish people shouldn't even like the Jewish government. Jewish people should not even like the Israeli government. They fucking treat people like you're lab rats. I mean, they signed a deal with Pfizer to make sure like 98% of you guys got vaccinated.
COVID shots, and then some of these noticers will say, "Oh, but they got fake COVID shots." Like that's the level.
One of the problems is like just some of the ambassadors that people roll out there in the political sphere that are just fucking distasteful. Like people don't like Ben Shapiro, people don't like Mark Levin, and like that's who. They trot them out there like they're like a spokesperson for it. And I think that does a lot of damage. I mean, you guys see, like, I don't know if you followed Schroyer's page lately, but bro, he's ticked it up a little hardcore because a lot of these people were like personally insulting him because of his view in Iran and things. And yeah, man, it's like, I do think also for the other side too, it's like, well, I say other side, but it's like, if you're like a Jewish influencer and you believe in all these causes, look, you'll probably get further if you care to get further with the other side or looking more reasonable. If you maybe just kind of dialed it down and like explained your reasons. Like I watched that debate that Alex did with Dinesh D'Souza and Fuentes, and I thought a lot of Dinesh D'Souza's points were neoconish and kind of outdated. However, he didn't push it in a way that I found to be offensive that I couldn't at least listen and think about it. So I just think so many people would do themselves a favor if they just like dial down the tribalism and just fucking be normal, man.
100%.
Seriously.
No, Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin should be deported. Honestly, they should be forced to live in Israel.
Well, there's a real thing here.
Come for the new task force. Sorry.
For even legalized immigration, I do think that like if you want to immigrate here, there should be serious vetting. It should be worth our while. You should be worth it to us. You should be valuable to us, and you should have to give up your other citizenship. And we shouldn't accept anybody if they don't do it.
I read the other day that we've taken in more H-1B visas this year than we have deported people, which is 117,000 to 77,000.
I hope that's not true. That's horrifying.
Well, let's be real. Without this new thing that just passed, we didn't have the manpower to even do it. You need a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So
a lot of people. That's why I recommend self-deportation incentives. Like as many as possible. Like label them as invaders. Like why have we not done this yet? They're labeled as invaders. You're automatically a fugitive.
You can argue all day that we could have done different legal means to, start conducting the deportations. There's definitely better economic solutions. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, and I know that it gets a little problematic when you involve, government, private contracting with the government, but Eric Prince had a solution for $20 billion that sounded pretty good to me. I mean, it's not that I'd want Blackwater mercenaries running through the cities, but I just want them out, man.
100%.
Well, but also here's the thing, though. This is why the Second Amendment's very important. And I know that again, this is I know I'm the crazy person on the show. I get it, but if the Second Amendment, if the government had nothing to do with our Second Amendment, these people are invading our country. I am actually truly shocked that Texas allowed people to a lot of these ranchers have castle law. But of course, the ranchers are the people hiring them. So, I mean, that's the actual problem. But that's where I get I totally agree with you. Blackwater mercenaries. Sorry, I mean, the most we shouldn't be borrowing more money to push out the people that we borrowed to come in.
They thought I was kidding on this different podcast when I said that I was talking about crime and I was talking about immigration, and he was like, "Well, what would you do about it?" And I was like, well, I'd temporarily militarize some cities. I'd have checkpoints. I'd have stop and frisk. I'd have all kinds of the stuff that you hate, because realistically, to go through 3 months of inconvenience as a lawful, legal citizen of this country in order to get these people out of here in an expeditious and lawful way, I'll take it, dude. So some of the things that go on in the most violent areas, Los Angeles, South Chicago, wherever else, let's start to actually go ahead and do those types of things.
Yes.
Put people in prison where they belong, reclaim our cities, restore our culture and the country to what we deserve. We've just let these people, whether they come in or whether they just act amok, that actually are born here, and we just can't allow it anymore. And so that's what I mean by some of the online discourse and some of the stuff. It's dude, you're talking about level 1,000 when we're at level 2. We've got such serious issues in the country. I want to see my family prosper here, man. And it's I truly do see a turbulent future ahead. And there are some things that we can worry about potentially down the road, but Jesus Christ, we got to deal with, with this first. So
that's a great point for us to wrap up. Totally agree. Alan, final thoughts, and then Dominic, final thoughts, please.
I've said all mine. I really appreciate you coming on, man. I appreciate you setting stuff up, Andrew. Thank you, everybody. And for anybody that I pissed off, just know I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, it's been a pleasure talking about you guys. To the noticers out there, just all I can say is that if you're going to give me any trouble about this bullshit, understand, man, that if we're not going to be friendly or make allies, and we're not going to actually be realistic about pushing shit forward, it's just never going to happen. So, start to use some tact, start to be friendly people. You don't have to agree about everything, but stuff is getting pretty serious here. And I do, and again, we mentioned it earlier. If you can stand by your views, you should be comfortable going ahead and putting them out there. And again, this was a friendly conversation. I thought this was productive. I thought it was good. And I hope that, hope we can get this country back on track, man. And for other people too that feel super disenfranchised, or they don't trust Trump necessarily, or they feel disappointed, this bill got passed. This money really does talk. Let's hope for the best. Let's get the Epstein files and let's actually get to the truth like we wanted to begin with. And let's just move forward,
Yeah.
Awesome.
I can't imagine at 45 billion a year that ICE is going to get, whatever the crazy number is. Even if they didn't want to, even if they weren't trying, if they're spending that money, it's going to end up with more deportations. So thank God for that. Happy 4th of July to everybody. Dominic, thank you for coming on the Jewcast. Where can people find you on social media?
D Michael Tripi on X. I don't use my Instagram much, but DM Tripi on Instagram if you want to get me there. But yeah, man, just thanks again for having me. I hope everyone has a happy, safe 4th of July, and let's put America first. And if it's your thing, maybe have a couple beers this weekend, everybody.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Follow Dominic, the noticer with the biggest balls on the whole internet. Came on the Jewcast. God bless America. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Thanks.
We're
guys.
out.